Look at this timeline in my Ancestry Tree for my third great-grandmother. It shows family history, but it's impossible to see patterns or compare lifespans of the next generation. What if I told you that in just a few minutes, using AI, we can transform the Ancestry timeline into this? A horizontal chart where you can instantly see patterns and lifespans. Here's another version where I've added the births and death years to the display. It's so much more obvious as to which children lived longer and the decades of their childhood and adult life. Some of my other tutorials require you to use Python, and that can be a bit scary, although I think I make it easy for beginners. But this one, there's no code, no software platform, it's just you, AI, and Google Sheets. Let's get started. First of all, I'm going to tell you that of the free GPT tools, don't use free ChatGPT for this one. I often use ChatGPT, but for this particular task, I couldn't get it to do enough analysis before it hit this error. So I switched over to the free Google Gemini and it did what I want. I've got a don't know here against Claude because I have the paid version of Claude and it does work, but I want to use a free tool for this tutorial and I didn't try Perplexity. Once I realized it was working in Gemini, I said, okay, that's the tool for this task. Let's go to Gemini AI tool. I am signed into Google. I'm going to gemini.google.com and I am on the free version here. And in another tab, I've got my Ancestry Tree. And I'm interested in this particular person. I go to her profile and you land on the Facts tab, which shows you this vertical timeline. So I want to copy this timeline over to Gemini. I certainly don't want to type in all this information, but Gemini does a great job of just parsing out what you copied. So I'm just going to click here just above that timeline and I am going to drag my cursor down to highlight everything down to this death entry. Control C to copy into the clipboard, and now I'm going to go over to Google Gemini. And before I paste in what I've just copied, I'm going to tell Gemini what to do with what I'm about to paste. So I'm going to give it a prompt. Check the description below this video and you'll see where to go to get these prompts if you don't want to type them in. Below is the timeline of events. I'm saying below because after I type in the prompt, I'm going to hit paste and give it the timeline. That Ancestry.com gives me for an ancestor in my family tree. Just to show what I'm doing clearly, I'm going to just drop a line here. Don't hit enter to do that or it'll submit just this sentence. So I'm going to hold down shift, hit enter. You don't need to. So now I've told Gemini the information I'm about to give it. I want to tell it what I want to do with that information. Extract birth, marriage, and death events with their dates. I'm being quite specific there. There could be other types of events in that timeline, baptism, funeral. I just want to keep this to birth, marriage, and death. New line. And then I want to check the extraction that it's done a good job. So I'm going to tell it to display all the data. And if you don't say all, it might just truncate and give you the first 5 events. What should the display be like? Well, ultimately I want to copy this to a spreadsheet. So I want it in tabular format with these columns. I want the header to be date, type of event, birth, marriage, or death, and the event details. Now I'm going to drop 2 new lines just to give space between my instructions and the actual data I'm about to give it. So hold down shift, hit enter, enter, and now I paste the contents of my clipboard, which is that Ancestry vertical timeline. So control V. So I'm going to hit submit, give it a bit of time. Okay, so actually it's only given me the details for Anne. The last time I did this with that same prompt, it gave me the details for Anne and her children. So now I'm going to modify my instructions. So this is the good thing about filming live, in that this is now doing something a little different from the last time what I did it, but that's fine. It's got in the information in this chat session. I want to say extract the data to include the birth and death events of Anne's children. I'll just say of all Anne's children. Right, that's more of what I want. We have less death events than I have birth events of the children because I haven't sourced death details of all of Anne's children. So this is still a vertical timeline. Remember what I want to achieve? Something like this, where the decades are going across and there is a visual indicator in each decade to mark where that particular individual was alive within that decade. I did try to get various GPTs to produce a timeline for me as an image, and they're not there yet. Certainly the free versions aren't. But we can get it to do a lot of the work that will let us get this image out of our spreadsheet application. So what I want is to turn this vertical data into a grid where the header is the decades, 1920s, 1930s, etc. Let's start with that instruction. I'd like to convert this tabular display to a grid as follows. Grid is also a tabular display, but bear with me. Create a header with the first column called person. This column will contain the list of Anne and her children. The next columns will represent each decade from Anne's birth to the last death of her children. Now I'm going to give it an example so it understands what I mean. Let me just scroll up and see. So Anne was born in 1819. The second column header will be 1820s, and the last column header will be final death was in 1945, 1940s. However many columns that is, I let the AI work that out. For each person, place one, the number one, into each cell for the decade that the person is alive. So for the persons where I only have a birth event and I don't have a death event, I just want to spell it out what it should do in those circumstances. So when a person does not have a death event, only mark the known birth decade. I intend to copy this grid to a spreadsheet. Okay, so those are my instructions. Let's see what it does. Hit submit. At first glance, it's got the right format. I have a little scroll bar here, so I'm just seeing it goes up to the 1940s. I'm going to do a spot check to make sure that it's right. I will say that in some of my trials of this, it got one row wrong several times, and then when I corrected that, when I pointed out to it, it redid the grid, and then something else was wrong. Right. So let's see how it goes. We have 1, 2, 3 births that happened in the 1830s. So I'll just scroll down. That's Anne's sister, so she isn't in this timeline. That's fine. We've got Bernard, Margaret, and Mary. So that's 1830, 1830, 1830. Then the next person is 1840. So what? I've got 1, 2, 3 born in the 1840s. Is that about right? Yeah, 1, 2, 3 born in the 1840s. So this is looking good. Then I have just one mark in the 1850s for Catherine. Let me scroll down, and this is the unfortunate Catherine Collins, who was born and died in the same year. So let's see how it deals with the entries where I do not have a death date. So Kathleen, I don't have a death date. And then back up here to Margaret and Mary, I don't have a death date. Let's see how it's dealing with what Margaret, Mary, and Kathleen. Ah, look at this. This is where it's gone wrong. It's put in ones all the way across. I'll just scroll over to the right. It's decided to put ones up to the 1900s for Margaret and Mary. But that's not correct because I don't have death dates for those ladies. So it's got that wrong. So I'm going to point out to it that it needs to correct itself. So I'm going to tell it, you have entered a 1 in decades for people where I don't have a death date. That is not correct. I only want a 1 in their birth decade and they should not have subsequent marks. Let's see if we can figure it out. It's telling me that I'm absolutely right. So now we're seeing Margaret and Mary only have the marker in the 1830s. And is there anybody else like that? Catherine and Kathleen. And I know that Catherine, born and died in that decade, but Kathleen, I do not have a death date for that lady. So you do need to double check what it's giving you. It's not always easy to see where it's gone wrong. You can say to it, are you sure you have this data correct? And if it does another run through its own logic, it can correct itself. So I'll just show you. Please double check that the display is correct. Yeah. Let's show its thinking then. I'm meticulously reviewing the grid. Yes, I've double checked the display and it's now correct according to your specifications. Now, I'm satisfied that it is correct. But what I would advise you to do is if it's not obvious to you looking at these ones that is correct, make it do another check of itself by saying this. Please double check the display is correct. And the GPTs are so used to being wrong and being told they're wrong that it will actually go and recheck its own work. And I've had it come back and tell me that it's found another error at times when I haven't spotted an error and I'm just telling it, are you sure? Are you sure that's correct? And it's come back to me saying, sorry, got that wrong. Here's the correct version. So now that you've got this grid, what are you going to do with it? We're going to copy it over to a spreadsheet and we're going to use the color formatting features of spreadsheets. The nice thing about Google's Gemini is that it's integrated with the rest of the Google family, so you don't need to copy and paste. You can just hit this export to sheets button and it'll throw the information right up there and open a Google Sheets for you. So I'm going to hit export to sheets. It is creating spreadsheet and down here it's telling me that it's created a new spreadsheet and giving me the link to open the sheet. So click open and here we go. Here is my spreadsheet and it's given this title of whatever that title is. So I will just change this to be an horizontal timeline. So how do we go from this to this? Well, this is quite easy. Just follow my lead. One thing I noticed, I literally did this exercise yesterday and the day before, and Gemini today, when it parsed the data, it gave me Anne, just Anne, but previous day it gave me Anne, her maiden name and her married name. But that's a minor thing. Everything else is pretty much correct. So I'll just pull this out of the way. We're going to do a number of formatting steps in Sheets to produce a very nice display. So first of all, I'm going to take out a person from here. I don't really need that as a title. And I will change and I'll put in her maiden name. Next, I'm going to format the size of the text and the width of the columns. So I am going to make the names here. At the moment, it's a size 10. I'm just going to up that to 12 in terms of the font size. And then I am going to do the same thing. I'll just select the entire header row and I'll also up that to 12. What I'm going to do with the header row is I'm going to bold it. And now, having got the sizing that I want for the font, I'm going to fix up the width of these columns. So first things first is the first column. I'm going to just double click on the line between A and B and size the width accordingly to the names. And then I don't want to be scrolling off the screen. So I'm going to highlight columns B to scroll over to O. And by highlighting them all, I can just change the width of one and they'll all change. I will double click to bring it in to a reasonable size, and that's exactly what I want. So having done that, now I want to address the fact that I don't want all these ones, right? Instead, I want colors in each cell. Highlight the area that you want to apply some formatting to. In my case, it is the area that could possibly have the ones. So don't include the header row. That's important. Don't include the name row. Just this area here. Once that's highlighted, click on Format. And in the drop-down menu, click on Conditional Formatting. And it pops up a panel here to the right that lets you define your rule to apply conditional formatting. And it's already applied a default rule, which is pretty close to what we want. What it's saying here is that for the range that we've selected, which is this range here, if the cell is not empty, and 1 is not empty, but this cell below for Bernard Collins and 1810s, that is empty, do something if the cell is not empty. What will we do? We'll apply a formatting style. And in this case, the formatting style is decided to apply is to set the fill color to be this green. But I don't want it to be green. I prefer a light blue. Now the trick here with this palette is to remember which color you choose. In my case, I'm going to be choosing this blue, which is light blue 2. It's kind of 4 down. So I'm going to change from green to blue. And what that has done is that it has, as you can see, it's changed the color. Now, because I've highlighted this area, it might look like the rest of this has some kind of different color as well. It hasn't. If I just click out of here, you'll see that what I'm getting now is no color, white, and then this blue. But I don't want to see those stupid ones, right? So I want to make a modification to that rule. I want to hide the ones, get all of this area highlighted once again, so it's the same area we're dealing with, and that is this particular rule. So I set set the fill color to be light blue, I am going to set the text color to be the same color as the fill color. Expand that, and this is why I said to remember whereabouts the color was that you chose. For me, it was 4 down, that light blue 2. So choose that, and voila. Notice that the ones have kind of disappeared. They're still there, but they're just the same color as the fill color, so they've gone away. If I click done, just close this and come out of here, we're getting pretty close to what I want. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give myself space around here, which will make more sense when you see me copy this as an image. So I'm just going to insert a column. And then I want to insert a row above the header. Highlight the first row, right click, insert one row above. Now I've got a little bit of space to play with. Now I want to make these grid lines disappear. The way to do that is I am going to highlight the area plus a column to the left, a column to the right, a row above and a row below. And now I want to use coloring again, but this time on these borders, like the borders around the cell. So I go to border, expand that, and apply all borders. You are then going to set the color to be white. And if we click away, now we get the effect that we want. What I'm going to do in order to grab this as an image, in Windows, I'm going to use built-in snip tool. So I just typed in snip to my search bar there. Up comes the snipping tool, and I'm going to click plus new. I am going to, and this is why I gave myself an extra space above and below. So just click in a place that'll let you grab and surround the image. So I'm now dragging, and that is what I want. I'm going to now release my cursor, and what that has done is that it's put that image into the snipping tool. I'm just going to save it. On my opening shots in this video, I showed a nicer presentation or a nicer visual with my horizontal timeline. My go-to is Canva. If I go to canva.com, there's a free and a paid version. So if I go to templates in Canva, I scroll down where you see the little crown, that's the paid version. Where there's no little crown, that's the free version. Suppose I like the look of this one. Customize this template, and then I go and find my file. Here it is, and it's horizontal timeline. I'm just going to Control C. I'm going to drop it here. So much more you can do in Canva. You can explore yourself, but that's how I made the opening graphics. I showed you 2 timelines in the opening shots, and the difference with the other timeline was that it had the birth year and death year within the timeline. So how do you do that? Of course, you can type it into the spreadsheet, but who wants to do that? So the last thing we're going to do is to go back to our AI tool and ask it to give us the grid, but with the birth and death years included. And then I'll show you how to format that in Google Sheets so it comes out like this. So I'm back in Gemini. This was the last grid it gave me, and I want a modification to this output. I want to amend the grid so that the birth year and death year are displayed in the correct decade cell instead of 1. Keep the 1 for all other decades that the person is alive. I do want to do something about the one individual whose birth year and death year is the same. I want to mark that out. So I'm going to say when the birth year and death year are the same, display the year but with an asterisk after it. I will submit this. Now I've got an amended display. So I can see Anne's birth and death details. I can see that my 2 that it originally got wrong, where I had 1s all the way through, it hasn't repeated its mistake. And then if I scroll down, then I know that this is correct. I know Kathleen, I don't have a death date for her, but Catherine, I do. It's the same year, and there's that asterisk. So I'm going to export again to Google Sheets. I will have to apply the formatting again. I'll do the sizing kind of quickly now. Okay, so now I want to apply my formatting rules, but they will be a little different. I'm going to highlight the area to which I want to apply the formatting rules, get rid of that, and go to Format, Conditional Formatting. And once again, the default rule is, if not empty, set to green. The first rule I'm going to apply is not to all the cells that aren't empty, it's to the cells that are set to 1. Because those cells, I want the 1 not to display. So I'm going to expand the rule options. I'm going to find is equal to. And I'm going to set the value to 1. I want to set the fill color to this light blue, and I want to set the text color to light blue. So now I've got what I want with the ones. If I click away, you'll see the effect, but I would like to have the decade with the birth year and death year to be the blue. I just don't want to hide the text. So once again, I'll choose the full range, and now I am going to add another rule. What is that rule? I want to choose now if it's greater than 1. I'm going to keep the blue fill color, but for the text color, I'm going to remove the blue color. So I'll just click none. And you can see that the numbers are now displayed. Why isn't this 1854 colored blue? Well, the reason is that because of the asterisk, that is not a number. It is now text. With this rule, is it greater than 1? Google Sheets won't apply that rule to a text. So I need one more rule to deal with any situation where I have this asterisk. So I'm going to, you guessed it, add another rule. And now I need to amend this rule, which is just a copy of the previous rule, to be that if the cell, which is a text, ends with asterisk. And notice how the rule got applied, fill color blue, but no text color. So it's showing the text. So I'm going to click done on that. I am done. Got 3 rules, and I'll click away so you can see that this pretty much is what I want. So I'm going to give myself a bit of extra spacing. I'm going to apply the formatting of the border. What I'll do with that particular cell is I'll justify it to the right, otherwise it looks a little bit odd. But that's it. 3 rules. Can snip that and you've got yourself an amended timeline. If you want to play around a bit with the colors, here's a slightly modified display where I set a contrast between those birth and death years and the intervening decades. Now, this might be exactly what you want if you're doing family sheets, but what if you wanted to do wider analysis? What if you wanted to see similar horizontal charts, but for everybody who was born within a particular region? Everybody who was born down an entire branch, so could be 40 people. How about everybody in your tree in a rather long but information-rich picture? You could keep going to and fro from your Ancestry profile page of individuals and copying them over into Gemini, but that can get a bit tedious. My recommendation is to use code. If you'd like a tutorial in my Python playlist in this channel, drop me a comment. With Python, I do the actual chart within the Python script. I'd also do it with SQL. I'd use SQL to prepare the data for 100 or 400 people, and then I'd copy the data over to Google Sheets and do the formatting that you've seen in this tutorial. If you want to have a go yourself, then I have 2 courses, one with Python and one with SQL. All links in the description below, and best of luck with your family research.